What's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert, money mindset and fulfillment coach, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur. Come sit with me while I spill the real tea on what it's like to practice using intentional manifestation, demystify all of the woo-woo and confusing bullshit that comes along with creating the life of your dreams, and give you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, spiritual, and professional growth journey. The goal of this podcast is to support and guide you towards manifesting all of your dreams, shed light on the things that people are too scared to talk about, and encourage you to become the person who gets to have it all, be it all, and do it all. I am so happy you are here. Let's fucking do this thing. What's up, loves? Welcome back to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Ooh, we got a good episode for you today. We are talking about money today. And if you know me, you know that I love money. I love to talk about money. I love to spend money. I love to save money. I love to invest money. I just freaking love money. And this is such a huge piece of my journey, my story, my relationship with money, and how it has transformed once I really started to dive into the inner work and heal my relationship with money, which has ultimately allowed me to step into this role now where I manifest money, I make more money, I am completely financially free, and I'm going to be doing a separate podcast episode about this, but how I went from $70,000 in debt to completely financially free in less than a year, and some of the massive mindset shifts and actual shifts that happened in my life to make that possible. And as so many of you are already aware, this is what I teach inside of ABA. The Abundant AF Babe Academy is really healing this relationship with yourself, healing the different things inside of you that makes up your own relationship with you, as well as your relationship with money, because the two of them are so interconnected. And that is a huge thing that we talk about in today's podcast episode with the incredible Miss Ellyce Fulmore, who is a money coach and educator, helping millennials step into their power, rewrite their story around money, and build sustainable wealth. It was such an honor to have this conversation with Ellyce and really dive into what is working in the world of financial literacy and learning how to build wealth versus what isn't. And so many of these past structures that have been created around wealth that have really done so much harm to the way that we view money, the way that we view wealth, and really learning how to heal those different things, as well as just like really understanding your relationship with money and how a lot of the time it has absolutely nothing to do with money and everything to do with different parts of your personality, parts of your identity, and what makes up you. And therefore, your relationship with money, the way you interact with money. And this was just such a incredible conversation to have with Ellyce. I was so grateful that she could come onto the show and have her share all of these incredible wisdoms that she has, many of them being practical and tangible, but also some of them being this mindset-based, psychology-based work that you can do to really heal your relationship with money and actually start to see that dynamic start to shift inside of your finances from an energy of grace and understanding and just a lot of forgiveness and love for self, as opposed to guilt and shame and embarrassment and so many of the heavier emotions and feelings that lie around money and the topic of money as a whole, which is just like one of the things that we dive into this conversation, is all of the guilt and the shame that has really been placed upon the world of finances and how to break that down in your own life so that you can start to have a really positive change inside of all of it. So without a further ado, here is my conversation with Ellyce. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. Today, I have Ellyce Fulmore, who is a money coach for millennials. And this conversation is about to be so fucking juicy. We about to get up in here about money, and you know that I love that. So, Ellyce, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you and get into all the juicy questions.
Yay, perfect. So let's kick this off with your story. Like, what has led you to doing the work that you do, being a money coach for millennials, and living the life that you have now?
Okay, how far back should I go?
That is such a good question. I would say like what you feel as though like really made the transition for you to step into your power, especially financially, and start to create the life that you have and the business and the impact that you have now.
Okay, I'm going to take it back to university because I feel that a lot of people listening will probably relate to this story as well. So I actually have a kinesiology degree. So I went into that degree thinking that I would continue on to be a physiotherapist or occupational therapist. And that was kind of the path that was set out for me the whole time I was in school. And that was the path that was set out by my parents of like, you know, you need to go to university, get good grades, get a good job, that kind of thing. And it's what I told everyone I was doing. And it really became a large part of my identity of like, I'm going to do physiotherapy. And all of my friends, they were all going on to do something similar, either like med school, physio, that type of thing. And so I felt like I really needed to have this plan of what I was going to do when I graduated. So that was a thing that I clung to. And it was probably in my end of my third, maybe beginning of my fourth year. I did 5 years for my degree. And I was working as a physio aide in a physio clinic. And I had the realization that this was not the career that I wanted. I knew that I really wanted to help people, but I like through working at a physio clinic, I realized that I wasn't forming the connection with the clients that I really was seeking. And I had this realization of, I don't know what I want to do. And I don't know like who I'm supposed to tell, who do I talk to about it? And I felt really embarrassed almost about not knowing what I was going to be doing. So I just kept telling people, oh yeah, I'm applying for physio. Yeah, I'm going to do physio because I was like, didn't want to tell them, I don't know what I'm doing. And I felt very lost, very confused. It felt like everyone else around me had it figured out. I had a lot of student loan debt and a line of credit and a maxed out credit card. And I was like, holy shit, like, why did I do this degree and have nothing to show for it? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do after this. So I really took that time and dove into personal development. And I started listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of books, going to workshops in the area, joining some like entrepreneurial groups, and just trying a lot of different things because I was pretty desperate just to get answers, to figure things out. And through that, I discovered life coaching. And as soon as I kind of figured out what life coaching was, it felt like the missing puzzle piece for me. I was very familiar with online fitness coaching because of my kinesiology degree, but I knew that that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then I realized that people were doing online life coaching, and I was like, I could do that. Like, I've always been the type of person that people come to for advice. I've always loved helping people. I've always been, you know, involved in personal development and that type of thing. So it just felt like the perfect fit. So after I graduated, that was what I pursued while working like a full-time labor job. And I still kind of was feeling very stuck because of my debt, because of my money situation. I didn't have a lot of money to invest in my business. And yeah, just didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I kind of was like, I know I like doing this, so I'm going to continue doing it. So we fast forward to January 2020. So I've been kind of working part-time and also trying to build my business part-time, not really getting a lot of momentum. I had a couple clients, and then I went to this conference in October. Sorry, I'm like mixing up my timeline. I went to this conference in October of 2018, and that led me, or sorry, 2019, and that led me to decide to go full in on my business and actually commit and actually like hire a coach for myself and just go all in. And so January 2020 was when I really started my business, and that's when I had like a full program, and I, was talking about it every day on social media and just really committed to it. And then, as we all know, the pandemic hit in March of 2020. And at the time, I had, I think, 3 clients, and I was working a part-time job. I got laid off from that part-time job when the pandemic hit, basically right away, like March 17th, I was laid off. And I kind of was like, okay, what now? And my only thing to do was like, again, continue with my business, because obviously I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything else. So I just decided to dedicate as much time as I could towards that. And through that, I kind of started focusing more on career and money topics because of the pandemic, and so many people were struggling with that. And that was already something that I had been teaching with my life coaching clients, just in kind of like smaller format. And I was like, well, people really need this right now. So I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about money, talk about career. And that really just snowballed through the pandemic, because it was information that everyone needed to hear. And I started talking about it on TikTok, and my TikTok blew up within a couple of months of people just like obviously needing to hear that information and needing to hear it from someone that was going through and had gone through a similar situation from them. I'm sure like if you've been on the online space and looked at like any sort of like financial guru, you'll know that there's usually like old white men that are telling you to spend like nothing on yourself and put all your money towards your debt and all this stuff. And so my content really resonated with a lot of people, and I didn't realize how big the gap was until I actually started creating that content. And I realized, wow, like there's all these people, like my following is growing so fast, and that's for a reason. It's because there's not other people out there that are telling them information that are the same age as them, that have gone through the same thing as them, and that are actually telling them not to restrict themselves and kind of take a different approach. And so my business really blew up through the pandemic, and I was able to go completely full-time by September, which was incredible. And since then, it's just been such a crazy journey. There's been a lot of pivots in my business and a lot of growth. I have no idea what my final income will be for this year, but I do know for sure that we're going to be in the multiple 6 figures, which is very crazy as someone who has never made more than $30,000 a year previous to this. So very fast. I still don't even really know what happened. It's like I blinked and suddenly I had a 6-figure business. And yeah, I'm just really excited to continue doing the work that I'm doing and to be able to share financial information in a way that is fun and enjoyable and not restrictive. And I know I just said a lot of things, so please, if you have any questions about that ramble.
Absolutely. No, I just love it because you're so right. There is such a huge gap, especially because it's like, I feel as though as a millennial, as like my listeners are primarily millennials as well, it's like, we're not taught a lot about money. And that situation that you said you were in of like, having the college degree, not wanting to follow that path, being in that debt, not knowing how you could invest money in your business, all of the different things, and wanting to change your path and feeling that guilt and that shame and that embarrassment around it is such a huge reality that so many people face. And I'm sure you see that as well. So as you were learning those different things when you went on that like personal development journey, how did you start to step away from that guilt and that shame and into this place of empowerment when it came to money and your finances?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I feel like half of my journey happened before I went online and started talking about all this stuff. And then I feel like the other half of the journey happened after I started talking about online, and it's still happening today. I was kind of raised in a household where my parents are actually very good with their money and they have managed their money very well and set themselves up very well, but they did not talk about money in the household. So nothing was talked about. If I asked a question, it was shut down. Like even in university, when I applied for student loans, you initially had to put in your parents' income like income tax information, which led to me actually getting denied my first couple of years because my parents made too much money. But anyways, I had to submit their information and my dad wouldn't even tell me like how much they made to put in it. He took my laptop from me, went to a different room and inputted their income and then like went past the page and brought the laptop back to me. So even like me being like 18, 19, my parents would still not talk about how much they made. So that was kind of the household that I was raised in. The only financial information that I was really given was don't go into debt and save all the money you can. Like don't spend money on frivolous things, like that kind of mindset. And so when I needed to go into debt in order to finish my university degree, I felt so much guilt and shame, and I did not know who to talk to about it. I tried talking to financial advisors and going into banks, and I had awful experiences. I know that there is great financial advisors out there, but I'm sure that a lot of you listening have also had a similar experience where you're talked down to, you don't understand things, they're condescending, and it's just like a very nerve-wracking experience, and it doesn't feel like a safe space for you to talk about money. And so that was the biggest thing of like, I didn't feel like I had a safe space anywhere. I felt like all of my friends were doing good with money. Turns out they weren't, but I didn't know that. And I thought that, you know, my parents would judge me. I felt not safe at the bank or with financial advisors. So that guilt and shame just really snowballed. And for me, it was really understanding that it was not my fault that I was in this spot. And also that so many other people have experienced this exact same thing. And that's kind of been the premise of all of my teaching. Like I originally came in with the belief of, oh, you just need to learn financial literacy and you'll be better with money. Like that was my belief, that I just didn't know enough or that I just made bad decisions. And kind of through my personal development journey, and then also since I've been online, I just realized more and more that it's actually a lot more to do with who you are as a person and like your mindset and outlook on money, and also like what your parents told you about money and how you grew up and experienced money, right? Like if you have in anything, if we step away from money, if you have a traumatic experience in your life, that's going to be something that will influence and impact you from that day forward, right? And everyone can kind of understand that. But for some reason, we don't apply the same logic to money, even though it's the exact same, right? Like even a traumatic experience that isn't related to money will impact the way that you view money and spend money, because it's something that so profoundly shifted your life. And that was the turning point for me, was like, as I started to learn more about myself, I started to, you know, come to terms with my sexuality. I realized I had ADHD and got diagnosed. You know, I realized like all these different parts about who I was, my people pleasing tendencies. And this was like, oh, the light bulb moment of these are the reasons why I chose to manage money in a specific way, or I made this specific decision, or I thought this thing was okay, or this thing wasn't. It wasn't because I didn't know. Like, obviously that would help if I had more financial literacy, but the root of the problem was me not understanding myself and me not like realizing how who I was impacts my money. And so that would be definitely the thing that changed it all for me. And then through talking about it online, so many other people have shared their experiences and what they've gone through. And that's just, you know, put more pieces in the puzzle for me of like, we're all really living the same life. Like, I mean, obviously different circumstances, but so many people are struggling with their money. And, you know, we need to just acknowledge that. And obviously, you know, what the financial gurus have been saying isn't working. Like the whole restrict yourself, just don't spend any money, just, you know, do this thing, all these specific things. Obviously that's not working. Otherwise, a lot more people would be thriving with their money. And so that's kind of the message that I'm trying to get across too, is it's so much more than just knowing how to pay off debt or how to build savings. Like that, of course, is an important part, but it's so much more about who you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Because that's been exactly what's been true for me in my life, is that my relationship with money and what I thought it was is the exact same thing of like, if I learn more about financial literacy, if I read this book by Dave Ramsey or this book, then I'm finally going to get it. And I'm finally going to be able to reach my financial goals. And the further and further I got into that journey, the more that I realized it was about me. It wasn't about like the actual physical manifestation of money. It was about my relationship to myself, my self-sabotaging behaviors, why I self-sabotaged in the first place, how money made me feel better in those moments. And I think it's super powerful that that was the shifting point for you, was recognizing that it wasn't just learning financial literacy, it was learning about yourself and being able to go even further into your own inner world and now helping other people do the same exact thing. So like going even further into some of those things that you feel as though aren't working, like the pieces of what we're typically taught in like especially America, but like Western societies. What's not working when it comes to learning about money and about financial literacy?
Yeah, so I have such a big list of things that aren't working, but one of the biggest ones is not talking about money and the taboo that there is around money. I think that's one of the biggest things that is holding society back from like really making a change with this, because money is still, like, research shows that people are still more uncomfortable talking about money than they are about sex, which is so crazy. Like, they'd rather talk about their intimate sexual experiences than talk about how much money they make a year or what savings account they use or anything like that. And so one of the biggest things we can do to kind of break down that system is talk about things. Like, one of the most powerful things you can do is talk about your salary. Like, be open and upfront with your coworkers. Talk about how much money you make to try and address these unequal systems that still exist, right? And the more that people talk about money in any sense, like in a casual way at the dinner table, talking about it with their children, talking about it, negotiating money with their boss, like the more comfortable that people are around money, it's going to be like a tidal wave of changes, because it really does spill over into so many different aspects. And this is interesting. I was actually having a conversation about this on my group call last night, but we were talking about, basically, it started out with negotiation. We were talking about negotiating bills, and then it turned into a conversation of asking for what you paid for, or like what you should be getting. So for example, if you order food at a restaurant and they bring you the wrong meal, I know so many people, and this used to be me because I was such a people pleaser, I would just eat the meal, even though it was like completely not the thing I ordered, and I wouldn't say anything and I would feel bad about it. And that's an example of like, no, you should be able to say, hey, I didn't order this, I want to return it. Same with if you book an Airbnb and something's wrong with the Airbnb, like maybe it's completely dirty and no one cleaned it and the sheets are dirty or whatever. Like, you should complain about that and get money back, obviously in a way that's respectful and kind, but like, this all relates back to talking about money, right? Because that relates back to, like, that's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But if you're comfortable talking about money, you're going to be more comfortable in these other situations as well, like negotiating your salary, negotiating your internet bill, asking for your meal back at a restaurant, like all of these things. So that's a big one that's not working, is the taboo around money. Another big thing that's not working with the approach to money is restriction. And I think this is such a big one that so many people kind of believe is the key.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically there's many forms that this takes. So there's things like no spend months, no spend weeks, like don't spend any money on yourself. Intense budgeting systems where you're counting every single dollar, which could be a system that works well for you. So if you're listening and you like doing that, then continue doing that. But for so many people, we don't like doing that. And it's kind of taught as like, oh, you have to like track every single thing you spend and pay really close attention. And anything that you spend that's not in budget, like, you should feel so guilty about that because you ruined your whole plan for the month or whatever. So those types of systems. And the whole idea that Dave Ramsey really preaches, which is you should not enjoy life until you paid off debt. Like that is ultimately what he's saying. He has word for word said you should not see the inside of a restaurant until you're debt free, which is just so crazy. And coming from someone who is in his position of power, that has millions of dollars net worth, that has this huge company, you see him as an authority, right? People see him as an authority, as a leader, as someone who has done it and is successful. And so when he's saying something like that, people are like, wow, it must be true. Yeah. And it, people really do believe that, because any video that I make talking about how problematic Dave is, I have so many of his supporters in the comments, and their main argument is, well, he's a multimillionaire and you're not. So why would I listen to you? Which is so ironic, because when Dave was my age, he was filing for bankruptcy, literally at 26, filed for bankruptcy. And it's just so funny. But people really view someone that has a lot of money and like that position of power and prestige as right, and that he has like the best information out there, when that's really not true. And especially if you notice that a system isn't working for you, there's other options out there. There's people out there that can show you a different way to do things. Like, it's personal finance, and there's so many different ways to do it. So it really makes me angry that restriction is seen to be pushed as like the number one way to be debt free, or the number one way to build wealth. So yeah, those are some things that don't work. In terms of like, if we take a more like mindset approach, we kind of already touched on this, but anytime you're trying to build wealth from a place of guilt or shame, or like a place of scarcity, that's not going to work. And I think that that's also a common thing, is like people feel so shameful about their situation, and they're like, I just need to make more money, and I just need to like get myself out of this position. And that's their motivation for building wealth. That's not going to work. Like, that's not a sustainable way to build wealth if you're building it from a place of guilt and shame. So I think that that's another thing that like we need to just throw out the window and like really focus on your mindset and approaching money from a place of abundance. And then that's when you'll see like the sustainable wealth being built.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's a mix of the practical and this abundance mindset that's like actually the sweet spot for it. And I was thinking about it before we hopped on this call. It's like, if somebody was to Google like financial literacy or like how to get out of debt, and somebody like you popped up on Google, as opposed to like the people who do typically pop up on Google, it's like, I can imagine there would be a massive shift and change, because nothing's sustainable if it doesn't actually feel good to us. Like we're never going to make long lasting change in any areas of our life if it's not coming from that place of abundance, and if it isn't coming from this place of empowerment. And guilt and shame and fear oftentimes are like the top motivators for people, and then they end up in an even trickier situation. And you're so right with all of those different things that aren't working. And so question for you is, I can imagine lots of the people who are listening are going to resonate with this. And how, if they're in this place of scarcity, they're in this place of guilt and shame and embarrassment around their finances, how can they start to make that transition into an abundance mindset and start to build wealth without restricting themselves and being able to still enjoy their lives?
Yes, I love this question. So I think that unfortunately the answer is not as simple as we would all wish it was.
Yeah.
But one of the most important things you can do is really start examining your current money mindset and kind of like, what are your current beliefs around money? So something that I get my clients to do, because I feel like it's an easy place to start, is think about what your parents or caregivers commonly told you or said about money, or even how they acted around money. So looking at, what they explicitly taught you, but also just your lived experience as a child and how your parents or caregivers were around money. So like maybe they were always fighting when they talked about bills, or maybe they were, stressed always at the end of the month, or, whatever that looked like, but then also things they told you. And get those out on paper, like write them down. What are things your parents said? Did they say money is the root of all evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't be frivolous. Save money for a rainy day. Like those types of things. Write them all down and then start to think about, okay, how did these things that I learned as a child, either directly or indirectly, how are they now impacting the way that I make decisions or view money today? So if we look at money doesn't grow on trees, I think that's a very common one that a lot of people heard as children. That belief is basically saying that money is hard to come by. Money is, not abundant. It's hard to get. You have to work hard for it. It won't always be there. That's what that term is really saying. And so if we look at as an adult, do you feel like you have to spend money as soon as you get it, for example, because it's not going to come by again? Or maybe you're the opposite and you hoard all your money and feel guilty spending on anything, even like groceries. Do you feel like you have to always like work super hard, work overtime, burn yourself out in order to be successful? Like, is that a belief that you have? So starting to make the connection between kind of your first introduction to money when you're really little. I think there's like research showing that you can start understanding like money beliefs by the time you're like 4, something really young.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like between 4 and 7, I think, is like when you form most of those things. So looking at that route and then seeing what things have transferred over now is like a great place to start. And obviously you've picked up other beliefs along the way, but that can be a starting point that is maybe a little bit easier to pinpoint because you remember these things from your parents. And really examining those and essentially trying to prove the opposite. So anytime we're trying to rework a belief, change our mindset, it's obviously going to take time. It's kind of a long process, but something that you can do right now that's kind of like a tangible thing you could start doing right away is actively searching for evidence for the opposite. So if we take again the money doesn't grow on trees example that's saying, money's hard to come by, you have to work hard, these things. What are examples in your life where money has been really easy, or money you didn't have to work for money? So maybe you got money for your birthday for free, maybe you got a bonus, you got a refund from the government, maybe you found money on the ground, maybe you did like a house sitting thing and you didn't have to hardly do anything and you got money. Like start actively basically proving that wrong and get in the practice of doing that basically every day or every time you think about it to start strengthening the opposite side. Kind of like an analogy that I like to give is like, if you've ever been, this goes back to my physio brain. If you've ever been to physio for anything, any sort of like muscle imbalance or even like to fix your posture, it's like your body has a natural state of sitting, right? Like even like right now, like I know I have bad posture. So my body's going into this natural state and it's not optimal. And over time, it's going to cause a lot of issues, right? It's going to cause neck pain, back pain, a lot of problems. And that's kind of your natural negative money mindset. You're going to an optimal state and over time, it'll start to cause more issues. And in order to fix that, you have to actively strengthen the opposite muscles that aren't being used. So in order to fix my posture, I have to strengthen muscles that right now I'm not activating, they're just chilling. And I have to work hard to activate those and make them stronger or just as strong as the kind of unoptimal setting. So it's the same with like your mindset. Is like you have to work really hard on the opposite viewpoint to strengthen that to kind of knock out the other one. So that would be a big thing to kind of examine because the guilt and shame for sure is probably stemming from some of those beliefs that you have. And I would encourage you to look broader than just money, like look at your beliefs on success, your beliefs on work, beliefs on wealthy people, like all of those kind of intersectionalities as well. And even like your self-esteem is a big one too. If you don't have self-confidence or self-esteem, that's also going to make you feel more shameful about your situation than maybe you would if you had a higher self-esteem. So all of those things I think are important to look at. Beyond that, I think it's really important to understand that you're not alone and that so many people are struggling with the same thing. And it's truly not your fault that you're in this position. It's a combination of so many things, of your lived experience, the things you were taught, of things you weren't taught, like the education system failed everyone, honestly.
Yeah.
The lack of social services and like free financial information, like that should be a government funded thing that is free for the public. That doesn't exist. Your mental health, if you struggle with any mental health issues, the system probably failed you, and having to pay for that, all the extra costs on top of that, like it's really not your fault. And I need you to hear that when I say that. And so part of that also goes with like forgiving yourself for decisions that you've made in the past and recognizing that like it's a combination of so many things, so many systems working against you, and you now can move forward with a new perspective and with a loving, forgiving perspective of yourself, because you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes moving forward. It's inevitable. It's always going to happen. We're human. But having compassion for yourself instead of that guilt and shame just makes such a difference in like rebounding from that, and like being able to step back and make a decision from a place of love, of like, okay, what do I want to do next, rather than like shame, because that just makes you want to like, even talking about it just makes you want to like curl up in a ball and like not face the world and not look at your finances, as opposed to if you have that abundance mindset, it's like, okay, I made a mistake, but what am I going to do next? And like, you can kind of look at things more objectively.
Yeah.
I just rambling.
Oh my gosh, no, incredible. So much good stuff there, and like some actual practical steps that people can start to take. And just to reiterate what Ellyce is saying in a different way for everyone who's listening is like, yeah, our belief systems are formed between ages 0 to 7. So everything you know about money, or not everything you know about money, but the core beliefs that you have about money were never yours in the first place. They were all learned behaviors, and the subconscious mind needs you to provide new evidence of what you're choosing to be true, this abundant reality, this abundant mindset that Ellyce keeps on talking about, and providing yourself the evidence of that being true so that you can start to counterbalance those limiting beliefs that you have about it to start to change the behavior that you have, which is so powerful to hear you talk about it. We have very, very similar belief systems on this and teachings on this, which I love. So with everything you said, and like you said at the beginning, it's like you've been able to create this insane transformation in your life and your finances, gonna make multiple 6 figures this year, which is super exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what's the dream for you? Like what's the dream life, the goal, the vision that you have for yourself that you're wanting to create?
So this is a hard question for me to answer because I feel like it shifts and changes so much. I recently kind of had another pivot in my business within the last couple months where I've made the realization that I actually want to step away from coaching a little bit and focus more on like free, accessible financial information, because
Cool.
I love coaching. I love connecting with people, but my true kind of passion and what I really want to do with my business is provide like resources and support for marginalized groups and for like everyone that doesn't fit into the patriarch. I just have such a hard time pronouncing that word.
Same.
patriarchal society. Such a hard word to say out loud. And this is a bit of a side tangent, but I truly do feel like the majority of systems in this world are created for chads, I will call them. So basically white, like straight, white, cisgendered men that work a corporate 9 to 5, like that is who the world is created for. And if you fall out of that system in any way, like if you are a person of color, if you are queer, if you are a woman, if you are disabled, if you're like any of those, you like face so many more barriers and have so many more like hoops to jump through just to get to the same point that Chad's at. And so that's like really my whole vision. And what I want to do is like create more accessible financial information for all of those people. And so really like coaching is really important to me. And I think I will always kind of do it in some capacity, but I really want to make the majority of my information free. So kind of like what goes along with that in my big dream is a podcast, which we'll be launching in the new year. So I'm excited for that. But really like creating kind of a financial literacy kind of empire that's going to address so many different areas. So I'm working on school curriculums to get that into different schools so that that's like financial literacy is part of the curriculum. I podcast is something I'm working on. I have a goal of being a New York Times bestseller with my financial book that is like not a personal finance book. I mean, it is, but it isn't, but will be a lot more focused on the intersectionalities of money rather than just like the tangible aspects of money. I would love to do more public speaking, you know, do TED Talks, things like that. Just providing as much information as I can in a free and accessible way to as many people as I can. Basically getting the message out to more people and changing the narrative around money and helping people change their money story so that they can build sustainable wealth in a system that is really working against them all the time. So that's kind of like the big vision. Like on a personal note, I would love to be working like 3 days a week. And, you know, I would love to have like 6 figures of passive income. That would be incredible so that I can spend, you know, more time creating content. I love creating content. It takes so much time and energy. So like being able to have passive income would be huge, and being able to have like the freedom to travel. I mean, obviously I do kind of have that right now, but with the pandemic, obviously I don't have that. But yes, I would love to be like traveling the world. I would love to be sharing the message with more people. And, you know, I'd love to go on like public speaking tours and things like that. But yeah, the ultimate dream is to change the narrative around money and change how people view money and how they understand it, and helping more people realize that it's not their fault, it's the system's fault. And there is ways to succeed in a way that feels good for them. And there's not just one way to do things.
Yeah. Girl, you're doing it. You give me chills as you're speaking about all of that, because that's something that is part of my vision as well, as like changing the narrative around money, and also changing the way from like when we are little and we are learning all of these things. Imagine how different the world could be if we were learning how to feel empowered and abundant with our money from a young age. It would be a completely different world. And I love that that is the vision that you're creating for yourself and for others. So
I do actually have,
oh, you go.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, I have something to say on the creating beliefs as a child, just because I think this is important to say that I really don't believe that it's our parents' fault in any way. Like, I truly believe that your parents, caregivers, you know, people in your life are always doing the best that they absolutely can with the tools that they have, and they have their own kind of beliefs and trauma. But it's now our responsibility to heal and to break the cycle for yourself. And if you are someone who plans on having children, to break the cycle for future generations as well, right? Like we have an opportunity right now to stop. It's our responsibility to heal this mindset and to change that so that we can impact people around us and start to change that. So just wanted to say that I'm not blaming parents. I'm not saying like, oh, they all fucked us up or anything like that. You know, everyone's doing the best that they can. We're doing the best that we can. But when you have this information, when you acknowledge that this has happened, now it's your responsibility to do something about it and not just like be complacent and keep the cycle going.
Absolutely. 100%. I always say that to the women that I work with. It's like, it's not the blame game. Everybody is doing the best they can to create the best life for the people that they're bringing into the world, their kids. But it's our responsibility to make the world a better place, and starting with your money mindset is one hell of a way to do it. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone who is vibing with this whole energy of like, fuck yes, I want to build wealth, I want to do it without depriving myself of life's simple pleasures, and create this abundance mindset and really break the cycle. but they don't know how to get started, what would you say to them?
Okay, so I'm gonna go against this and give more than one piece of advice, if that's
Oh
okay.
yeah, girl, go for
Um,
it.
but okay, the biggest piece of advice I have is understand yourself. Like, take time to really understand who you are and the dark parts about yourself, the light parts about yourself, like all of the things that make you you. Like, understand yourself and the systems that work for you. Like, really pay attention to the aspects of your life that are working really well and examine that. Like, get curious about it. Like, why is that area working well? What's working well about it, so that you can apply that to areas like your money. Like, that's a huge thing, is people seem to know what systems work well for them to be active or for them to eat well or to do self-care, but then when it comes to money, it's like, I have no idea what to do. And it's like, well, you do know what to do. You've done it before in other areas of your life, so just like take those systems and apply them to money. And it's going to look different than what Dave Ramsey is telling you to do, what the internet is telling you to do, but it's a system that works for you. And that's all that matters. So
Yeah.
that would be one big thing of like, if you're looking to get started, stop trying to follow the cookie cutter Google advice and start looking at who you are. With that also comes like rewriting your story around money, around success, around wealth, and really shifting from a place of survival mode that you might be in right now to an abundance mindset. Because I truly believe that the world doesn't work where you get money and then suddenly you're like abundant and you feel abundant.
Yeah.
It works in like the opposite way, and that you have to first feel abundant and then the actual tangible abundance will come. So really working on that too, of like, if you have an abundance mindset, the money will come eventually. It's going to come. But if you like don't have that mindset, then it's going to be really hard. You're working against a lot of different things. If I were to give a tangible piece of advice to this, because I know that it's harder for me to just say like, work on yourself, like that's a big ask, but a tangible thing would be to give yourself an allowance. So this is something that I really implement with all my clients and with myself, and I think is really important, is having a set amount of your budget for spending money on yourself. And I'm giving you the homework of, you have to spend money on yourself. Of course, like, make it fit within your budget. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It's whatever is available for you, even if it's like a $5 coffee, whatever that looks like. But spend money on yourself and feel good about it. Like, put that money in an allowance. Like, what I do is I use a prepaid Visa card and I just load it on every month. And that's my spending card. And I only spend it on like like things that I want to spend money on. So there's no bills on it, no gas, no groceries. Like, that card is for eating out, it's for going shopping, it's for getting coffee or whatever I want to spend that money on. And I think that's a really important habit to implement. And I kind of like the idea of it being like an allowance, because like when you were a kid, you got an allowance and it was all exciting. So to me, it feels like a treat. It feels exciting of like, oh, I got my allowance this month. And I like the freedom. It feels like connecting with my inner child of like, when you got an allowance and you had the option to spend it on whatever you wanted because you didn't have bills and you're a kid, right? So it's like, do I want to save this? Do I want to go buy 5-cent candy? Do I want a Slurpee? Like, and that's what it feels like as an adult too. It's like, giving myself that like freedom of that money of like, I get to choose how I want to spend it, and getting in the habit of celebrating that money and not feeling guilty about it is a really tangible thing that you could start doing right away, and a very important thing. Like, I truly will always stand behind the fact that you should always have personal spending money in your budget.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really creating that abundant relationship with yourself.
Yeah. And I thought of one more thing. It's
Cool.
another kind of tangible thing, but I kind of just touched on this, but celebrating money. So a great thing that I love to do with my clients is getting them to celebrate anytime money comes into their life in any form. So whenever you get a paycheck that goes into your account, whenever you find money on the ground, like literally if you find a dime on the, I guess there's US people listening, but anytime you find like a coin on the ground, and anytime someone gives you money, you get a raise, like anything like that, celebrate it in whatever way feels good for you. So if you want to have a dance party, if you want to have a glass of wine, your favorite coffee, not that you have to go buy something. I'm not saying buy something every time you get money, but celebrate it in some sort of way, so that you start again getting in this habit of celebrating money and being abundant, this abundance mindset with money. So recognizing that, hey, money is coming into me right now. I just got paid. Like, money just came to me. Like, how incredible is that? Let me take a moment to celebrate that, to feel good about it. I have a money playlist, and that's like my favorite thing, is just like playing my money playlist. So all the songs are like about money or about wealth or something like that. And yeah, that's another tangible thing that can really, like, you can again start doing tomorrow, that will really help shift into feeling good around money and feeling abundant around money.
Amazing. Oh my God, I love it. You gave us so many like mental, emotional, and like actual practical things that everyone can start to do to create this transformation within their finances in this conversation. So thank you so much for that. And how can people connect with you? How can they get in on all that you have to offer at the moment?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is ellyce.fulmore. I'm assuming you'll link it because people will probably not know how to spell that. And then my TikTok is where my kind of biggest audience is, and I'm definitely very active on there as well. And my handle there is millennial_coach. So those would be the two places to find me. You can also check out my website, ellycefulmore.com, where I have my programs and also like the money tools that I use all the time and love. And those would be the biggest ways to connect with me. And I do also want to give a gift to your audience. So
Absolutely.
If anyone who's listening to this episode, if you send me a DM on Instagram, it has to be Instagram because I only have DMs open for friends on TikTok. So DM me on Instagram, give me a follow, and let me know that you listened to the episode, and I will send you a worksheet. And I will maybe talk with you what would be the best, but I have like a financial audit worksheet I can send that's like a tangible way to get started. But I also have a lot of money mindset worksheets, which will probably be a better fit considering what we talked about. So if you message me, listen to the episode, I will send you a freebie to get started on your money journey.
Amazing. Y'all, go send her a DM, slide into her DMs. You need this sheet. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you again so much for coming on to the podcast. I know that this is going to help so many people.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was such a good call, and I can't wait for everyone to listen.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I am so grateful to have these no bullshit talks with you. If you enjoyed today's episode or the podcast as a whole, please spread the love by leaving me a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with others. This is how I will be able to spread more of these good vibes and be able to make more of an impact on the lives of others. And if you're not already part of all of the goodness and communities that I have to offer, check out the show notes. I have links to the different ways that I can support you on your manifestation journey and help you live a life full of more money, fulfillment, and freedom. But that is all for now. So big love and hugs, and I will chat with you soon, babe.